Okay, so it's an observation with Reuben Carey on the 1st of the 2nd, 2017. Just say hi, I'm Reuben.
Hey, I'm Reuben.
Right, okay, so we're just doing an observation on setting up the camera. So for me, can we just set up now you said the leg's a little bit broken, but can you use the bottom extenders?
Should be able to.
Yeah, so just extend it to sort of mid-height, a nice working height with the camera on as safely as possible.
All right. Do you want me to talk
No,
through it?
No, I know what you're doing, yeah. Okay. Do whatever, really, Reuben, but...
I don't want to risk extending it too high just because it is such a dodgy...
Yeah.
Okay. Can I put the camera on?
Yep. So who packed this away?
It would have been me about 5 minutes ago.
Okay, what's important to remember when sort of packing away and...
Usually take lenses off the body.
Yeah.
Of the camera.
Though to be fair to this one, it's
a relatively small bag.
And it's shaped that allows for the lens, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Which is often the case with photography bags like that.
So when filming outside, specifically with a tripod, what sort of health and safety things do you need to consider? It's filming in public.
Uneven ground.
Yeah.
Drains. Thank you. Curbs. Anything that might alter the stability of the camera.
Yeah.
Passers-by is of course as well. I mean, normally you'd have the place closed off if you're doing some serious filming.
But if you're not, say you're doing news-based stuff where you have to film amongst the public,
yeah.
What sort of things can you do to reduce the risk of people banging into your stuff?
You can be setting up signs, warning people of filming going on. If you've got enough people, you can get someone in a high-vis jacket just warning passers-by in advance. And just a general awareness of when people are going to be passing you or not.
I think another thing that's if you're on your own is to put yellow and black tape around the legs.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Right, okay.
No, that's fine. Okay, so just on the camera, we'll just get a closer look onto the camera.
Yeah.
So you can set that up fine. I know the tripod's not in fantastic condition. Talk me through sort of how you'd use a lens, like sort of certain features of the lens specifically.
I guess one of the key, if you're going to put it down to two features, I'd say length of the lens and speed of the lens. So the sensitivity of the lens to light, which is all related to aperture. And as I said,
so what's this one?
So this is the 50mm.
Yeah. What's the speed?
Speed of it, off the top of my head, I don't know. 1.4. So that's relatively quick, which means great in low light, and also you can get a big depth of field, which is achieving that cinematic look, which people often desire. So
what type of lens, if this is a 50mm, what type of lens is that?
It's a prime lens, which means it's a fixed lens.
Yeah.
Fixed lenses tend to have better crispness to the image in them. They have a very nice look to them, prime lenses, and more often than not, cinematic lenses on big productions will be using prime lenses, unless they want to zoom, in which they'll choose a zoom lens.
If you were talking to somebody through just not how to use it, but different features of this particular camera, what sort of things would you point out beyond the lens?
Beyond the lens, I would say if you're just doing a basic shoot where you don't really need any extras in terms of any rigs or rails or grips or anything like that, main thing to take into account: your aperture, your ISO, your shutter speed, and the frame rate, frames per second.
So talk me through those three things.
Okay, frames per second. Most things in the UK and Europe which is PAL is 25 frames per second. It's 24.99. In the US, it's more 30 frames per second. So it's literally the amount of frames you're getting per second. Most movies are shot at 25. Cameras are getting a little bit more advanced, in which they're shooting higher frame rates. And then you've got high-speed cameras which shoot ridiculously high frame rates for slow motion.
How about aperture? What's that?
Aperture. So aperture is essentially the amount of light coming on to the sensor through the lens. So in every lens you actually have an aperture ring, which is a series of segmented metal which creates a hole, a pinhole essentially, and the larger the ring opens, the wider the aperture you're setting it.
The iris, isn't it? Like the iris of the eye does the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So benefits, if you've got a very wide aperture, that's great for things such as landscape, because you might not necessarily want such a big depth of field. You want to get this building in focus, as well as the building beyond, as well as the landscape in the distance. So you use a wider aperture. Also in low light, it's in low light you'll be going the other way. You'll be taking a small aperture, 1.4 for example, like this, which will increase the depth of field and the light coming in, so you'll be able to perform in low light situations. So that's your aperture. And finally ISO. ISO is essentially the sensitivity of the camera. So higher the ISO, the more sensitive the camera, which means the more light it's letting in. Not so much letting in, but reading. An important thing to note is the higher the ISO you get, the more noise you get in the image. And noise is essentially when the image becomes a bit more grainy and it loses quality.
The pixels become more obvious, don't they?
And this is particularly apparent on a camera like this. When you start shooting in low light, whether it's photography or video, you're going to start seeing more noise because you're going to have to bump up the ISO to actually get any light.
Does depend on the lens, but
it depends on the lens as well as the camera. Because for example, a low-end DSLR, it will shoot at several thousand ISO, but the ISO at that level compared to on this camera is going to be poorer quality.
Whereas like the C300
can go up to hundreds of thousands of ISO and still perform really well.
C300 goes up to 20,000, still looks alright.
There you go.
Okay, cool. That's about it. You now need to collapse it down and pack it away properly.
Okay, I'll turn it off.
Yeah.
Do you want me changing lens?
No, it's okay. Don't need to change lens. Well, good. Just as a quick thing, on lenses, what sort of outside things can affect lenses? So, outside things, like environmental factors can affect lens.
Environmental factors. Well, I know that when I used to live abroad, it was actually illegal in the city centre to use a lens which was over a certain length.
Okay.
So you couldn't actually use, and that was only on the metro. So you weren't allowed to use a lens over something like 70mm. But if that's not what you
think about different weather conditions.
Okay, sorry.
So different countries, but
different weather conditions.
So maybe think